I'm Gail Trill. I live at 7174 Deepwater Point Road. I read in today's paper that Mrs. Genema will be a candidate for the treasurer's position. I sincerely hope the board has determined that she is fully qualified to handle this responsibility. Full disclosure of any conflicts of interests is essential to the democratic process. In the past, some conflicts of interest have been glossed over here. For example, no one has ever noted the fact that the spouse of the then candidate for supervisor handled the election, counted, and had access to all the ballots. This seems to be in the past, but we should not make ignoring potential conflicts of interest public policy in Acme Township. It is with this in mind that I would like to remind the board and the public that Mrs. Genema does have and has had throughout her term of office a potential conflict of interest as a board member and as a possible treasurer. Mrs. Genema is a partner in the company which handles tax assessment for our township. This could be a matter of concern because this would make the person responsible for collecting taxes also responsible for setting the property values the taxes are based on. Even though Mrs. Genema in the past has not been directly responsible for setting the property tax values in this township, her partner has been. That obviously puts their company in the position of being beholden to pressures from Acme Township officials. No one expects this sort of thing to happen, but clearly it can. As well as allowing a spouse to count votes in their election, this administration ignored the impropriety of the deputy clerk not adhering to the rules by ceasing to be deputy when the first duly elected clerk resigned, which the law appears to require. These omissions, perhaps committed in all ignorance, call for the citizens to be aware and wary of potential conflicts of interest.
Do we have a copy for our record?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Right here.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else? Tom?
Nothing long drawn out, nothing prepared. Tom Phillips, 2986 Wild Juniper. I've read the agenda for today's meeting. I know we had specifically talked in our last regular meeting about moving forward and filling the treasurer's position at this meeting. I also noted the additional agenda item as it relates to Robert's Rules and Parliamentary Procedures for holding these meetings. And it struck me as rather interesting as I walked through the double doors this afternoon. The sign out there says citizens driven. Citizen driven implies to me citizen input. And I think it would be appropriate for the board to be careful in moving forward with the second agenda item on running of these meetings, where you don't lose the opportunity for appropriate and, albeit sometimes maybe untimely citizen input, the opportunity for everybody to speak. As a member of the public coming to these meetings for the last several months as I have, I truly would commend the supervisor for allowing free-flowing conversations to occur during these meetings, albeit they may not be within the realm of Robert's Rules and Parliamentary Procedures, and sometimes causing delays and a little discussion that make the meeting go a little bit longer. But never once have I ever left this meeting and not felt like I didn't have an opportunity to talk. And for that, I thank the board and everybody on the board for that opportunity, and hopefully that's not changed drastically as a result of our conversations this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll bring it back to the board. Thank you, I appreciate it. First item is to approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve agenda?
Make that motion.
Support. White made the motion. Scott, support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, thank you. Inquiry to any conflict of interest on our agenda. Hearing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. And since it's very small, read this. If it's bigger, somebody else. Consent calendar. The purpose is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together for one board motion. Roll call vote without discussion. A request to remove any item for discussion later in the agenda from any member of the board, staff, or public shall be granted. Action, consider approval. Township Board meeting minutes of special meeting on 4/4/14. Item A. Item B, accounts payable prepaid of $1,280.53, and current to be approved of $495,536.50. Recommended approval. Kathy Dyke, clerk. Bring it to the board for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve consent calendar as stated, actions items A and B.
I'd request that action item A be changed just to Township Board meeting minutes. It wasn't a special meeting on the 4th.
It was,
Was it?
that Friday
It
was
was-
the
Oh,
special.
Fridays, I'm sorry, and I wasn't there. That's why I'm not quite following.
So you're not asking for it to be removed?
Correct, I'm not.
I would like to clarify an item on there for the public. A bill of $495,000 actually has two bonds in it. That's why, one of the reasons that's so high. We have a bond that we had taken out for capital improvements to help shoreline and farmland, and there's about a $200,000 payment. It's the last payment that's due, so you know why it's so big. The other was a payment for the city septic bonding that we helped pay for. Sewer, not septic, sewer, and that was it. So just for clarification only. So we have a motion to approve by LaPointe,
I'll second it.
seconded by Dye. Any other question from the board? Not, since we're spending this money, Nancy, would be a roll call, please.
LaPointe,
Yep.
Scott,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Solinger,
Yes,
Dye. Yes. Motion carries.
thank you. Item E, nothing was removed, so nothing there. New business. Update on Acme web search capability and archive data files. Gordy, you want me to give that answer, or you want to ask the question first? I just want to make sure we get it answered appropriately. That's why I'm
The
asking.
question I had is when we discussed switching from the previous application, the previous server, there's a big discussion on bringing the archive data over.
Right.
And there was a couple different solutions of doing that. One of it was leave the old data on another server with a link to it, which would be transparent to any user, or bring the data over. My understanding was the decision was to bring the data over. The data is brought over, the actual minutes have been brought over. As you recall, there used to be the links to all the detail in the old server. So the detail was, what in my mind was really important. And it hasn't been brought over.
Yeah, let me respond to that.
Okay, so that's the question.
That's the question.
Where's the rest of the data?
Okay, good question. Yeah, we ran into a problem on those links. That should all have be fixed by today or tomorrow. We didn't realize how much data we had, but most of those links were scanned files that looked like PDFs, but they really were scanned files, massive, about 8 gigs of data. And so they had to go back in and they had captured all that original data, and they had to go link it back to the files, and that should be done like today or tomorrow. I talked to Jim today, Jim Sundberg today.
Great.
And we had the same thing on the Myers archive files. There was stuff in there, and all at once we couldn't find the link that says this, and it didn't go here. And those have all been fixed. I've verified all but one. There is one, we don't have the original data on it, but everything else is done.
And the Google search will search the detail as well.
Should search the detail, yes.
Okay, great.
And
Fantastic.
if you find that it's not, let me know. These things are somewhat dynamic as we go.
Great.
But I appreciate the question. It's important we make these things usable to the people that want to look at the website and that do want to look at data. Interesting enough, since we've done this for everybody, we had somebody looking at the data on something and actually calling us looking for that data. So
Someone else but me is looking.
You weren't the only one, yes, sir. And I'm sure there's others, so that's fine. Okay, that's the update, so hopefully that's right. We'll continue to look at it. If you find as a board member or anybody that we find things that aren't, let us know. But there truly is old data that, I went into something, looked the other day, and it's a file, it says a name on it, there is nothing there. It's just not there. I can't reproduce what's not available. And we will end up with, by the way, a disk of all those old files. Not only will it be fixed there, but I'll have an actual disk that I can have access to. So at least we're not losing our data as a township. And that's key, I believe, for us. Next item of new business is to discuss procedures for conducting board meetings and/or use of parliamentary procedures. And I'm going to turn that to Gordy to start that discussion since he asked for this one.
First, I'd like to address, Tom raised the point when we saw this on there, and I can understand it. You know, are we going to go to rigid Robert's Rules of Orders and parliamentary procedures, which would mean curtail the audience participation? Absolutely not. If you attended meetings early on, you know, I've been a huge advocate of not only having the public comment at the beginning of the meeting and the public at the end, but on each topic, if appropriate, give the floor opportunities for comment. Because in the past, I sat in too many meetings where the agenda item that I was interested in was towards the end, and you make a public comment and the topic wouldn't come up for 3 hours later. So I fully endorse that. However, that being said, if you look at Robert's Rules of Orders, and I just did for the first time, it doesn't preclude public discussion or discussion amongst the board. It just has some procedures that should be followed to move the meeting along properly, make sure people aren't interrupted, give everybody an opportunity to speak in the right order. So it's just a manner of a way of conducting meetings that, if you look at most organizations, they follow them. So I guess what I would like is make a motion that a staff, or if staff wants to include somebody from the public, I've got a handout, and you can find this on the web, there's some nice summaries, put together a procedure or policy for the township to operate under in terms of running meetings. And I think it truly will benefit everybody and give them an opportunity to speak and speak properly. And it certainly isn't meant to curtail any conversations or discussions.
Okay.
Most organizations, and I was going to call Jay before I did this, but I realized the computer didn't have all the data accessible, that perhaps the township does have a policy on parliamentary procedures or how to conduct a meeting or whatever. So if there is one, then I'll retract this and take a look at it.
I think I can answer that fairly well. I had looked at that one time before, coming out of a meeting. And I believe there's reasons that might not be the most appropriate. And I've asked Mr. Jocks to help me explain a little of that. But when you look at Robert's Rules of Order, as the book is, and it's a very detailed package, there are so many things in there you can get hung up on not following just that procedure. And I don't know if you're looking at that in depth at all, but we want to be careful, in my mind, that we adopt something that later becomes very cumbersome to then operate the meeting under. Is that a fair statement I'm saying, Jeff?
Well, yes, I think, but I think I heard Trustee LaPointe speak a little bit differently than maybe what I anticipated.
Okay, that's fair.
I brought my copy of Robert's Rules of Order. And what concerns me is, if you adopt this
MTA
rules, you will be following and required to follow these rules. And these rules are very detailed with a lot of things. And I would encourage you, if you think you want, to get a copy of this. I'd be happy to let you borrow mine. And just to open up to a random page and start reading it and say, oh man. The reason that I don't recommend adopting the full Robert's Rules of Orders for any of my clients is because exactly what Supervisor Zollinger was saying. There are so many procedural requirements that if you miss a procedural requirement and think you adopted something, someone can come back and say, well, you forgot to do this, and you can get hung up on it. So I'm not opposed at all to some procedures in writing, but adopting the full Robert's Rules of Orders is a...
Show me where I said it, I don't even
I
read
didn't-
Robert's Rules of
no.
Order.
I might have
did,
interpreted that, so that.
But I only brought it because I read the, I didn't know what you wanted to do. I brought it because I read the agenda and I thought, well, perhaps someone or anyone, I didn't even know it was your issue, but would suggest we should adopt Robert's Rules of Orders or you should adopt it. And I wanted to make sure that before you make any motion to adopt it, that every one of you read every word in here and agree that you actually want to adopt this book as your parliamentary procedures. So, yes, I would be happy if you're suggesting that I work on it or I review it or whatever. I'd be happy to review procedures, but I would not recommend that you adopt this book.
But I just,
And maybe that's not what you're recommending, right?
Yeah.
let me just read what I said.
Okay.
Discuss procedures for conducting board meetings, use of parliamentary procedures. And my reference point was from the MTA, and they take sections from Robert's Rules of Order, which is again this thick, they designed for the military. And it's no attempt at that, I know many township has, but just something along those lines of how motions are made, proper procedure, sometimes you need a 2/3 vote, sometimes a majority vote. I just think we should have something in writing that everybody reviews.
Which one of these three, is there one of these that kind of hits what you're?
I mean,
More
I
than
think
the
that all
other?
three of them are of value to take a look at. And there's others out there, I mean, this,
No,
I
that's.
don't think this is being all inclusive or saying this is it, but just. if you
There are
look at
certainly
these-
simplified procedures that are not as...
And if you have, if there's another township that you're aware that already has procedures developed that works for them, and add that to the
Why don't we
mix.
get it in and look at it and then come back to the board with a suggestion? Is that what you've I mean, I'm not
I don't
opposed to
think
any of
I'm
this.
not a molehill, but it's like, if
No.
you, the staff,
Okay.
look at it, and if you want to include somebody from the public, just to get,
Input?
yeah, some input, what do you think?
Okay.
Does this cover their concerns? That's fine.
No, I'm all right with that. I just want to make, we might sure which ones, so we can go look at some others, we can look at this and come back.
It was just to give you some input.
No, I appreciate that. It sometimes helps, but we just want to make sure we don't, as Jeff said, get hung up on something 2.5 inches thick that kills us later, and that's not what you're suggesting, so I appreciate that.
Is it appropriate for the audience to ask a question, or should I wait?
We always just put up your hand, I'll try to watch, so if I don't, yeah,
Do I have to go up there or just ask
you
the
don't
question?
have to. We always prefer you to, but you don't have to.
Nancy Kitchen, 7150 Deepwater Point Road. I'm just curious, I thought there were procedures, parliamentary procedures, that were already implemented that we're supposed to follow. But is that not the case?
I've looked for the resolution, that normally you have a resolution to say we're adopting that. I have not found one that has said that. It doesn't mean people weren't following something very
Right.
close to that. They could have been following MTA procedures, for all I know. But I could not find a resolution. That's one reason you'll see this board do more resolutions, because if we do make a decision, if we do it under resolution, it's filed, it's there, it's kept for a long period of time, so you can reference it and see it.
Thank you.
Yes,
That's
good,
good.
very good question. And, a lot of times, probably what we follow is very close to it, so people assume that's exactly what we're doing, but I'm sure we aren't always. Anybody, Tom?
Could copies provided to the board members be given to interested parties of the audience today, if they were so would like to see what's
The end of the
being
meeting, we
proposed?
need to
Yeah.
copy,
Thank you.
You still have a copy of the 3 documents? Okay.
Why don't, if you don't mind, we'll ask Sharma to make some copies for us. Is it working okay?
Well,
We
there's
can do it later.
two-sided will work.
Oh, okay, I
one
understand.
side.
We have a problem with our printer on 2-sided, but we'll have to. So maybe what we'll do is if we've got some extra copies, we'll keep a copy for us to work with. We can copy later, and then I don't mind somebody having
If you wanted
mine.
to save ink, put it on the
Get that.
website.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gordy. I think that's a good suggestion and not a problem. Okay, any, next item to discuss is our interview of candidates for open treasurer position and possibly making an appointment to that open position. We did put ads out in the paper. We put a thing on our website about an opening for our treasurer's position. We got, in the end, no external candidates, I'm going to call it that for now, one internal. And you have those today, so I'll hand those out to the board. The internal one is Amy. We stated in the paper today, that's one we had, so it's no secret. We're not trying to hide anything.
That's what I was just gonna say, I thought it was something different because of the name.
Well, it's hard to say. Maybe they were on vacation.
New name.
But anyways, so we're here today to decide what we want to do with this position. And
Mr. Supervisor, I would recommend that trustee Genema just move and have a seat in the audience. Since
Oh,
we're-
that's a good
You'll
idea.
be
Since we're
moving
talking.
towards considering
Awesome.
her resume.
I-
Yeah, I think it's safe, no one's gonna see it.
Okay, so that's what's before us at this point in time. Amy did not make any secret of this in both 2 different meetings we had, and that she was considering it. She had been considering it, I believe you said originally, just to clarify, when you ran for trustee. So it's not a new thing that just last week all of us woke up and said, so that's what's before us. I don't know who would like to start discussing it or just talking about it. If this is something we want to do, remember we will have to then, as any elected position we have, whether it's trustee, supervisor, whatever, that we have to resign from one position once we fill the other, and then that position will have to go through the same kinds of processes to fill. We'll put an ad out, just like we did the treasurer's ad. We'll put something on the website, just like the treasurer, and we'll look for a candidate to fill the position, if it is an open position, and decide it that way. Same procedure, nothing, any of these elected positions all have the same kind of followed procedure.
The urgency isn't quite as extensive in the trustee position as it is in the treasurer.
Very true. You can still pay bills without one trustee, yes.
Yeah, I would say the only, although I don't have anything at the top of my head that would create an issue, but, you know, there are certain statutes that do require, you know, a 2/3 or supermajority vote to approve certain things. I can't think of any on the, you know, anything that's upcoming, but, so, you know, doing it timely is important, but, you know, it's not critical,
We have some
so.
external reason to do it timely too, I think by state statutes, not just.
Yes, sure.
Yes, which is.
That would still apply.
Right, I mean, it's timely, but not.
It's just not the same effect of not being able to produce paychecks for employees or pay bills that are timely. So where would you all like to start this discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, Mayor.
Yes.
I'm Linda Weichel. I was the previous treasurer of Acme Township. Amy came to me back in 2012, stood in front of me and said, "I'd like to be treasurer. Are you going to run?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Then I'll run for trustee." That makes her very honorable in my book. I think Amy is capable. I know that she's got family experience. I know that she brings to it a high skill in math. And I know she knows this township and the people who live here. I could not stand it if you destroy her like you have destroyed a clerk and a very qualified treasurer already. Please, if you are going to select Amy to be the treasurer, please get behind her and stay behind her.
I would think if we are probably at the position of looking for a motion to either accept this as an appointment at this time. I don't know what else we have to deliberate on, and if somebody has something they want to say from the board. We have a candidate, a viable candidate. It's important that we do move forward with filling any position appropriately. We are sitting with bills ready to be signed as soon as we can give somebody this job. That's important for our employees and for the public that we owe dollars to, whether it's bonding or whether it's just regular bills to Ace Hardware. We as a township are responsible for the financial duties that we have in the public. So, I don't know of anything else. To me, we need a motion if that's what we want to do.
No, really, there's not a quote-unquote requirement for background for the position. Anyone can run for it. Obviously, we would hope they would have some skills in math and things as such, and I think it's pretty well noted in her resume that she's got those skills. We've got a previous treasurer that believes she would have the skills as well. I think that pretty much answers the question. We have one applicant, they have the skills that are needed. So I'd make a motion that we appoint Amy Genema to the open position of Acme Township Treasurer, effective immediately.
I'll support that.
Any other discussion from anybody? I'd like to ask for a roll call vote from Nancy, please. Motion by Scott, seconded by White.
Scott,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Solinger,
Yes.
Dye,
Yes.
LaPointe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for your willingness, by the way. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have a letter of resignation?
No, she can't vote then.
No, for trustee.
Great hesitation.
Well,
Yeah, she's not treasurer until she's sworn and bonded.
that's right, that's right. And I would think that we would also probably want to ask for, if it's appropriate, let me know, Mr. Counsel, but for her resignation, so we can act upon that appropriately today at the same time. It's not on our agenda, so you have to, I didn't think about adding that because we didn't know who the candidate would be. I didn't know what that's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I mean,
She can resign.
yeah, I think, well, it's appropriate to provide your resignation to the clerk, so if you would handwrite a resignation as trustee.
Do you want to do it on the back of the agenda?
Why don't you make your resignation effective?
date?
No, effective the date, when, do you know when she'll be sworn?
Today.
And, okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Effective.
Effective, yeah, okay,
Effective
She has to apply to the county for the bond.
for the bond, how long is
Yes.
that?
They'll.
Well, that's only, we can swear her in before she does that, she just can't sign checks before that, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's, yeah, I just want to make sure the public knows what that is. One, there are two different effects.
You can get it from Johnson County.
The bond,
They
is it,
bonded me through the county.
well, I know that we have a bond through our ML,
MML.
Uh-huh.
and that is
All we have to do is call
listed
them.
just as treasurer, so that it's blanketed whoever is in that position, and I checked into that.
We just have to say, this is the person now in that position.
Bill bonded me,
Bill, Rakos.
Rocus, through the county, yeah. And he's probably,
We'll make sure that's done, no doubt about that. It's important to the public that the people that have the money are appropriately.
Jeff, one thing that I just now noticed and didn't think to ask when we were setting the agenda was I thought we tabled the discussion in regards to the accountant assistant, or however you want to term Dennis, at the last meeting for this meeting.
You did. It's not on the.
Is that on the agenda? So we need to
Well,
wait until our next
Yeah,
meeting?
you
Yes.
can't,
Okay.
when you have a special meeting,
Yeah.
when you notice, when you
We will add
you
it.
can't amend the agenda.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you can if you have a full board present, but I don't,
We
with this
tend to
shuffling, I
never
would
do-
say you don't have a full board present, so.
Well, not only that, but
Yeah.
it was tabled for this, but it wasn't published as being here. That's why I'm asking.
So you should wait till the next, your next.
Actually, we,
See, I thought it was for the next board meeting.
Okay, the next board meeting?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
and the reason it was, I remember somebody that, in the public, right, I heard that made a comment about that, which was a good comment, Tom, that we ought to wait until we get a new treasurer,
Right.
which we did not know whether it would be today or not, and then have that discussion if that's true. Okay. That was why it wasn't here today. We didn't know who was. So,
Yeah, that's acceptable.
huh? We'll make sure we act upon Amy's resignation first.
So-
Oh, okay.
I believe that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Then we can-
I'll go get my notice.
Then you're done.
I don't have
On
one.
the
Okay.
agenda?
Does that work? That one I'll.
What's the question?
Well, I think it's part of the appointment process. I think that's okay to accept the resignation since it's part of the appointment process of the current treasurer, or the current trustee. Current trustee.
So I think a motion would be in order since we've received a resignation from the trustee position to accept.
I guess, can we see what our final story was?
We can read it. Just read it out loud.
That's why it's part of the public.
Everybody
record.
knows
Can
what's-
you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can read it.
Attention, Kathy Dye, clerk, please accept this as my resignation as Acme Township trustee, effective as of my appointment of township treasurer.
Boy,
Yeah, township treasurer.
Okay.
That was quick.
okay. So I think a motion would be appropriate to accept that.
Make a motion to accept the letter submitted from Amy Genema resigning her position as trustee once appointed, or as she's appointed to the treasurer's position.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Thank you. Okay. At this point in time, I guess we have concluded our meeting as far as our agenda shows. I will open for public comment at this time. Yes. Good to see you today.
My name is James Dye. I reside at 3573 Dock Road. It's a Williamsburg address. I am the husband of the clerk, Kathy Dye, and probably much to her dismay, I'm standing before you today. The one topic that I wanted to bring up was a topic that got tabled also at the last meeting, was a response in the Record Eagle to Treasurer Colette's article of March 21st. That was supposed to be discussed at this meeting, and I fully expect a response from the Acme Township Board to that article. I have the article handy if you need me to read any of it, but basically in that article, the treasurer made claims about the clerk's office specifically, that she'd been doing things inappropriately and very possibly illegal. Later on in that article, my wife was personally named, okay, which is slanderous to me and to her, okay. And the township treasurer did this while she was the Acme Township treasurer. So I hold both the township and Treasurer Colette responsible for those comments. So I guess what I'm asking today is, what is the response?
I believe because it's not on our agenda, this would be an item we.
It was also tabled at the last meeting, so I don't know who's handling the agendas, but, you know, why isn't it on the agenda for this meeting?
Well, I guess I can't, my interpretation of the last meeting that we did was not that was going to be put on this agenda. I'm the one who normally puts the agenda together with input.
Gordy has said that he would have a letter ready for this meeting. That's what he said at the meeting.
So, it it's not there, we can't add an item to the agenda. I think it's appropriate, whatever our next meeting is, then we'll make sure it is there. Response. Look, I understand your comment very well.
It's true, we have been damaged. Okay, and Kathy, you know, unfortunately takes these things laying down. I do not.
I don't think,
I do not.
I'm not laughing, it's not a laughing matter.
Yeah,
when I
it's
say
not a
that.
laughing matter.
No, I don't mean that.
Those are serious allegations, okay? We've lived in this township for 30 years. I don't need to be slandered. So basically, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait and see what happens at the next board meeting to see if there is an appropriate response. Personally, I believe that you should contact Brian McGilvery and have a full disclosure interview with him, just like he apparently interviewed the former treasurer. And at that point, then you can clear up all of the allegations that were put forth, that basically, as far as I know, we haven't received any documentation.
Nothing is clear.
Have we received any documentation?
No.
Okay.
We all want
And
to
then
say-
basically, it would be printed as an article, okay? Not as a letter to the Record Eagle for which they could decide to put in or not put in. Okay? But unfortunately, if there isn't something done about this, this will require that I'll have to consider some options myself.
Gordy, did you have a letter ready for today?
I put one together, but I didn't bring it. And my take on this is, to be very honest with you, there isn't a consensus on this board in terms of should you respond, should you not respond. And I would be more than happy if I thought there was a real consensus to come out with a response to submit it, but my sense is, and I'm personally taking the same, now we're getting off the subject, I've received another letter of a cease and desist and then demanding retraction, else punitive damages, et cetera, which is just pure BS.
Well, the direct
So-
quotes in the article states here that Colette contends the township clerk's office has not followed proper accounting practices, standards, or regulations. Over the past several months, I've become aware of a variety of financial irregularities, some of which have the appearance of impropriety and others of which that are clearly improper and possibly illegal. Colette wrote in her single-page resignation letter. Has anybody seen that resignation letter? Because that's...
It was attached to our last meeting when we had it. It was a single page,
Single
I resigned.
No.
Single sentence, not page.
Yeah, so this is the letter that I'm talking about. It says this was included in her letter.
No, we have not seen what the paper is alleged.
Colette wrote in her single-page resignation letter, which is clear, however, what is clear, however, is that I find myself in a position where I can no longer safeguard our citizens' dollars, not to mention pass an audit without material findings. Those are big charges.
Well, in addition, those were aimed at the
Just
clerk.
brother,
Just a minute.
I just want to make a recommendation, and you can ignore me if you want. I want to just suggest that the board avoid discussion of this. It wasn't on your agenda. It's a hot button issue, understandably. Mr. Dye can speak about it at public comment, and that's not an issue, but the board starting to get into some discussion and deliberation on it gives me pause because it's not part of the agenda, regardless of why it is or isn't, but it's not there. So as I said before about the other issue, adding something, it's just not appropriate under.
So now we have procedures. Okay.
Well, just let me say,
It's not a question of procedure, it's a question of legality. And
Just let me
like I
say
said, you
that-
can ignore my recommendation if you'd like at your own writ. I make recommendations, that's all I do. I don't make orders.
Let me give the floor back.
Just let me say that when trustee LaPointe says that unfortunately he doesn't have the backing from the board, that to me is disgusting. Because Kathy was named personally, but you were all implicated. I didn't elect this board and support these candidates so that they could be run over by something. I expect you to lead. So I'll wait to see what happens in the next board. Thank you.
Thank you for your appreciate it. Anything else from the floor? Charlie?
Carly Wenslack, 6597 Deepwater Point Road. I'm glad to see us moving forward. My one recommendation or urging would be when you're interviewing to fill the new trustee position, I feel like we've had some struggles with whose motivations are what. In the past, I'm newer to the township. I haven't been here for all of this, and I really struggle with I'm going to be here for a long time, and I'd really like our image to start to get better. So I really urge you to ask people what their motivation is for getting involved with the board if they're seeking to fill that trustee position. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Anybody else? If not, anything from the board?
Can I?
Yes, Amy?
I don't know if this was discussed to start with, Gail's letter that was given. It was.
Gail read
Did
the
you?
letter, we did not discuss it.
I just want it brought up, again, letting everybody know. Gail has brought some points up that are related to me as treasurer because of the assessing business that I own with my business partner, Dawn Klug. Okay, it's never been a secret, but I when I ran as trustee, I tried to make it very open. I am not the assessor for Acme Township, okay? I assist with field work. And so in doing that, you might see me knock on your door, say, hi, I'm Amy, we're with Acme Township, we're here because you pulled a permit for whatever you pulled a permit for, we need to inspect, blah, 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 blah. I do not do your analysis for land values, I do not do your analysis for your ECFs, I do not set your land values. I did call MTA and ask them if it was a conflict, being that I was a owner of a company that was assisting the employee, Dawn, and they said there was no conflict there. But I just, you know what I mean? I called them, it was an immediate, there is no conflict. There is in statutes where any position can have additional duties. So that's just, I mean, I just wanted to address that so people are aware. I mean, like I said, when I ran for trustee, that was well known. But for some people, I just want to make sure, because it's so tied to the treasurer's position in some ways, people could potentially see that as an issue. But I did check, and I don't know if you had checked out, you checked too. I'm assuming he checked, but I did.
Yeah, I recall I looked at it when after the election, and we discussed it from the conflict of interest policy perspective, and that you would recuse yourself on any votes for assessing contracts. I did look at it once you mentioned it at the previous meeting, just to reaffirm and in light of the more intensive duties of treasurer, and I found no issue. For the record, there's the Acme Township conflict of interest policy. There is sort of general conflict law, and there's also the Incompatible Offices Act in the state of Michigan. What that act says is you can't hold two positions where one conflicts with the other, two governmental positions. There are, at a minimum, in interpretation of the act has an exception for communities of less than 25,000 residents, which Acme fits within, and so therefore, it basically exempts that act from communities with less than 25,000 residents. So from the Incompatibility of Offices Act perspective, that's cleared as well. So I don't see any issue with conflicts or incompatibility of offices.
Isn't the law you're quoting conflict of interest in offices? The assessor is in an office.
It's not conflict of interest in offices. Incompatibility of offices includes employment within the township.
And Amy's in, not Amy, Dawn is in.
But I've already reviewed it.
Yeah. And look at it. We appreciate your comments. I think it's important.
Thank
the
you,
public to know that.
Amy, for responding to my question. Appreciate it.
Anything else on the board? Otherwise, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming today. This is an hour of the day.
When's the next meeting?